Welcome to another edition of the Post Game Podcast. Previously on riotradio.ca, now on YouTube, Spotify, and even on our own website, where you can find every piece of sports content myself and my co-host do. I'm Ryan Pigeau alongside or across the webcam from John Lodge. And this ambitious program, we're all about breaking down the recent advancements, I should say, in the sports world, the NHL, NBA, you got it. We're always poised to deliver hot takes on all of it. I think we're a little soft on NFL today, but what do you think? NHL, NBA, and major leagues, we got lots of stuff to talk about, correct?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to get to. Some breaking news we'll get to, and yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to go on with the NFL right now. Some contract stuff with the tag deadline passing, and we'll get into that. But yeah, no, definitely more heavy on the other sports for sure, man.
Yeah, well, this time on the presser, we're getting caught up on Auston Matthews being announced as early as this afternoon, the Lady Byng finalist. The Maple Leafs are back on the ice this week after having some team scrimmages. And you heard a little bit about this too, the small controversy that's involved referees and stuff at practice. It's already the talk of the sports market in Toronto radio, as we get all ramped up into sports in the next.
Toronto Maple Leafs are the New England Patriots of the league without the championships.
It's true, without winning a single thing. We're the dichotomy of every sports talk radio here anyway. And then the NBA, we've got some questions that continue to arise around that bubble. And we're going to try our best to wrap our heads around just how much weed is being smoked at the NBA players' protected bubble. John, we saw this report.
A little bit foggy in the bubble, I think. Yeah,
that's
a little foggy in
there.
there.
Yeah, Marcus Thompson of The Athletic, he kind of a little bit of a groundbreaking report to somebody like you or I this week. It says on The Athletic, it's one of the highest read articles. That tells you right there. But essentially, there's a deep dive on just the massive amount of pot that's available to these NBA players in this bubble and just how much they actually rely on it. We all know that, the NBA has kind of been part of that culture, right, as it's moved forward. So you get a lot of people, like we'll talk about it later, but Al Horrington, who's basically transitioned from an NBA vet into a weed salesman, if that's a better way to put it, I don't know, or if there is a better way to put it, I don't know. But John, before we get too much further, there's some Blue Jays inter-squad games we want to talk about, and then Dak Prescott. Like I said, we want to make sure we touch a little bit on that stuff, because earlier in this week, I think there's been a bit of a nail driven between two sides here, and I think I want to get your football experience and your take on Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys and the relationship there, how rocky that might be now.
Yeah, no, I got a lot to say about that. We'll save it. We'll save it for the end of the pod. But I've got no love for the Dallas Cowboys. So if you're expecting Care Bear level stuff, then maybe plug your ears.
I'm looking forward to hearing you carve up whatever situation Jerry Jones has got himself into this time. And I think it's Dak's fault, but again, we're going to move it on. You can follow us both on Twitter. I'm at Respect My Takes, and John, you're still John Lodge Music. That's at JONLODGE Music.
I promise I will not make your ears bleed.
No,
maybe with my hot takes, but not with the music.
Yeah, I won't disagree there. Our hot takes sometimes both are a little bit off base, and I could have given you the gears. We're going to get right into NHL now, but think about your call last week. None of these NHL players are going to, none of them are going to, call it quits on this return to play plan. They're all tough enough. They're coming back. And honestly, 45 minutes after we uploaded our podcast, you've got, one guy, two guys. It starts with Travis Hamonic and all that. What's going on, John? Like, apparently our takes aren't so hot lately, are they?
Okay, so apparently I had the assumption that every player was Nick Foligno level, and Nick Foligno had a great quote, and I can't say it word for word because I can't remember it, but he said his goal was to win the Stanley Cup. He told his kids that was his goal, and to do anything less was he felt like he was disappointing his family and disappointing himself. So that's what he was going to go and do, and I just assumed that every player had that sort of level, and unfortunately, I mean. For the Maple Leafs, they're facing the one team that does have players that think that level, and there are some other teams in the West. I mean, is Travis Hamonic even an NHL player? Can we just talk about that for a second? Like, all this guy does is complain, whine, piss, and moan, no matter where he is, and now he's one of the first guys to just destroy my take and make it completely ice cold. Like, I mean, oh my God!
Where you have a soft spot. It's not so much that you have a hatred for Hamonic. It's just what he's done gun to your take so quickly, right? Because I was
Yeah.
gonna say I haven't even really been paying attention to his career since he asked for that trade out of the New York Islanders. He wanted to be closer to
Yeah, a pretty good team, by the way. Can we just say that? Like
I mean,
the Islanders
yeah.
are a pretty good team. So yeah.
No,
I don't
100%. And he
know.
asked for that
Weiner.
trade. Next thing you know, he's kind of fallen by the wayside. I guess he had more of a spotlight in the island and over there.
I mean, he's good. He's good in Calgary. He's good. Don't get me wrong. He's one of their top defensemen, but he's a whiner. So, yeah, it does not surprise me that he was one to opt out. But I mean, like, we have yet to see any really big names say no, right?
100%. I said that to you earlier in the week. It's kind of a lot of fringe NHL players that know that they don't really want to show up to camp just to be an extra body for the.
And they've already earned their money.
Yeah, and exactly, and it's for two straight months, right? So you don't necessarily want to sacrifice that if you're not maybe going to play games, and if there's a chance your name doesn't get on the cup. I can't remember the stipulations of how many guys' names get on the cup, but if you're a black ace, I can't remember if you're guaranteed. I cannot remember that. So who knows if that even factors in? Like if your name's not getting on the cup, like you've got paid. There are a few guys on the fringe of the NHL bubble that kind of you can understand why they may have backed out, but you're right. There aren't any superstars or guys, unlike the NBA, that have come out and said, like, I'm not doing this for personal reasons or for social reasons, etc. Because the world we live in is topsy-turvy right now. Moving on, though, real quick, because we talked about at Hamonic and a couple of those guys. We've got some exhibition games coming up in the NHL. If we're just going to do a wide brush NHL perspective here, it's about a week and a half away. There's 3 games scheduled July 28th, 6 games scheduled Wednesday the 29th, and then another 3 games on the 30th, the Thursday, and that wraps everything up, John. Next thing you know, we'll be right into the first round, and things will be set in stone. Are you looking forward to watching the Leafs and the Habs play, or do you even care about that game? I personally could care less who they're playing.
No, I'm looking forward to watching all of it. All of it, man. Like my beard is going to grow an extra maybe 2. The next time you see me, it's going to look like I might be look a little disheveled because I don't know how much I will have actually gotten off the couch. There's a lot of hockey to watch, man, and I'm all here for it. I'm excited. I can't wait till they get started. My DraftKings account is going to get a workout. So. Yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited for 6 games, man. 6 games in one day. What is there time for anything else?
That's what I was wondering, man, because if you see, it starts at 12. The Tampa-Florida game starts at noon, right into 2:30, 4 p.m., 6:30, 8 p.m., 10:30 p.m. You can schedule me off that day, man. Wednesday, July 29th. I'm not existent to the world.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm on the couch. I'm part of the couch. I am the couch.
I gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was gonna say I gotta be careful the night before. There's an Oilers Flames game at 10:30. If I don't get to bed in time, I'm not gonna get up in time to see the Tampa Florida game at noon. I'll miss one of those 6, and then I'll be off to a hot start. Right.
That Tampa Florida game is gonna be fire too. I mean, if it gets off because where they are, hopefully both teams get to where they need to be or I guess it would be Toronto, get to Toronto, all healthy. But yeah, that Tampa Florida game, that one is Bobrovsky going to be at the top of his game? What are we going to see from the top guys from Tampa? I think it's really good for Tampa that they don't have to play in this elimination tournament to get into the playoffs, right? Like after what happened to them in last year's playoffs, could you imagine if they had to play in a play-in? I mean, just the anxiety alone.
It would crush,
right? Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to a lot of these games, man. I'm just looking forward to live sports. I got to watch UFC last week, and that was amazing, except for
controversy there, right? A lot of controversy going down in that win, correct? Like there was
win. Like Volkanovski, he comes out and he says in the after fight interview that he dominated Max Holloway. I mean, I had Max Holloway winning that fight. Yeah, the last couple of rounds were a little rough. Volkanovski took control, but Max Holloway had won the first 3 rounds, and it was down to judges who had no idea what the hell they were doing. They're barely ever watched fights, let alone judged fights, and at this level. And Dana White said it himself. He was pissed off, man. Max Holloway was robbed. And then you coming off of the Jose Jose Aldo fight, like I don't, if you got to watch 251, if not, go to YouTube after this, man. Take a look at the highlights of Aldo versus Jan, and Jan dominated Aldo. It was great. It was fantastic. He rope-a-doped him, right? So it's hard to rope-a-dope someone in the cage, right? There's no ropes. But what he did was he gassed Aldo out in the first 2 rounds,
first couple of rounds,
right?
and then he showed up
And then he just dominated him from round 3. But there was a solid minute and a half before the fight was over and called by the referee, where Jan was on top of Aldo, and Aldo was in the tuck your head between your knees and kiss your ass goodbye position, getting his head pounded in from behind. But because he had his hands up like this, guarding, the referee wasn't calling the fight, and that was not, like, Dana White was not happy with that either, because, you know, it's bad optic for us around the world to be watching Aldo get his head beat in when he was so clearly giving up. He just had too much cojones to actually tap out to strikes.
Yeah, and you get a lot of people, when a referee calls a fight too early, they get a little offended because they think it should go on and on and on, when obviously the referee's got expertise to do so. And then the other way around, when a ref lets a fight go on too long, when guys thinks, you know, someone thinks a round should have been over, or we shouldn't have gone into the 4th or 5th round with this guy. You know, the referee's always in a tough spot, and that's the tricky part, right? You're never going to win when you're trying to make a judgment call, but it sounds like there was a lot of controversy in that one. We just did a complete side rail, but you make UFC so interesting, John. I didn't want to stop you.
Sorry.
No.
I was just I just really fiery about that. Last UFC point, there was a fight on the pre-card, and a guy took 3 nut shots. And then he took an illegal knee to the head in the fight. And the illegal knee, what that is when a fighter's hand is planted down on the mat, and their 2 legs are also, like, so they're in a 3-point stance basically on the mat. You cannot knee them in the head. Their hand has to be off the mat, right? So he kneed him in the head after kicking him in the groin 3 times, and the referee actually took 2 points. The first time I've ever seen a referee take 2 points off of a fighter, and it definitely cost him the fight. But I mean, can you imagine? It's really funny because I can't imagine being that referee and how mad it would make me watching this guy kick the guy in the dick 3 times. And then on top of that, Ryan, same referee later on in the main card had another low blow in a fight he was refereeing. I was just like, man, if that was me, and after that card, I'd be going straight to the first bar, and like, why me? Like, why me? I got to deal with all the dick kicks on the night. Like, honestly,
it was for this guy.
Yeah.
I was worried that the referee talk would get sidetracked, because I was hoping it would segue, but we just kept talking referee. I wanted to get back into the NHL, and just the idea that there's some sort of a controversy going on already. We talked about it in the intro here, but because a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs has resources available to them, and asked referees to come in during practice times to set the scene, when guys are practicing playoff power play and shorthanded drills, it's a lot easier to have a referee in the way, just like, you know, the real simulation, because you have less space on the ice than you do in practice. So, you know, from what I understand, John, the Leafs are in the middle of this controversy because they had referees at their practices, and other teams were frowning at that. They were upset that they couldn't do the same.
Yeah, well, okay, so they were upset that they didn't think about it, for one, and that Toronto is paying them to be there, I'm pretty sure, right? So,
that's awful.
But, well, no, it's not awful. We know that. Like, I know that I get the reaction is a lot of sarcasm, but, like, you know, the people are just mad that they didn't think about it. Toronto didn't break any rules. The NHL said as much. They didn't like that they were doing it, and it was just apparently an unfair competitive advantage for the Maple Leafs. And I mean, I think it's just it was smart game planning by Dubas or by Keefe or whoever had structured this and had the referees come in. I think that all teams should be allowed to get used to playing with referees again, because that's the one thing they haven't been doing. If they have been skating, like over in Europe with Nylander and with Kapanen, and even in phase 3, if they have been skating at their home arenas, they haven't been skating. They haven't been playing the game with the officials who are going to tell them, that's a penalty or offside, or, you know, like, you got to get used to playing with the rules again, guys. And I don't know. Obviously it's the Toronto Patriots, like I said, right? It's the New England Leafs, whatever you want to call them. They're the most hated team in the league because they're the most successful team. But Toronto just doesn't have the success in championships that New England has had, right? I mean, they get. It's just the spotlight, and people love to hate on the Leafs, right? They don't want them to have an unfair competitive advantage. So whatever. Instead of taking them away, give everybody the referees, bring them all in. I don't understand, man. It's so dumb. Like why take them away?
Honestly, you led right to my point. I was going to jump in and say I don't understand why everybody else had to argue and they couldn't just do the same. Do they not understand? Like you don't have to pay guys if you don't want to, but the Leafs had the opportunity to do so, so they did. So, like, essentially, figure it out yourselves. Like, it sounds like, I don't know. I'm frustrated by it because, again, you put yourself in the shoes of the Dallas Stars. If they can't go ahead and hire referees right now because of whatever restrictions, or because there's not referees available, or because they don't have enough organizational like wealth to be able to go ahead and say, let's spend another expense during this COVID pandemic on referees. Now they're sitting in their own stalls going, okay, we have to suit up a trainer, this guy, the equipment guy, and they have to go out and just pretend to be referees and just stand in the way, right? And because the Leafs don't have to go through all that, these teams are upset and are forcing the Leafs to not be able to do that. Is that what I'm understanding, man? Because I'm really kind of frustrated by that, if that's the case.
This is where, like, let's have everybody in the bubble cities already. This is what I'm talking about, right? Like, I don't understand why. So if obviously if a referee doesn't want to fly to Dallas into a hot spot to go work for a couple days out of the week for a few hours on the ice for a few extra bucks from the Dallas Stars because he doesn't want to risk getting COVID and risk his the most of his money he's going to make reffing the playoffs. So what? So let's get everybody in the hub cities, and then you have the referees there available. Like it's just like you're punishing the Leafs for being smart, and I mean it's kind of like the cap situation Leafs are in, right? Smart drafting, get punished.
I mean,
that's what it is.
Even if it's
apparently that's the rule in the NHL.
Yeah, the rule is to be punished for drafting well, exactly. And even if they're not punishing the Leafs for being smart, but just punishing them for being kind of more wealthy and having more resources, again, I kind of get it, but like, could they not just force the Leafs to pay for everybody to have referees if it was that big of a deal? Like, obviously it's, you know what I mean?
The league could pay for the referees and send them there, and then like it's just dumb.
I just caught myself on how petty I was being, right? It's such a very petty kind of conversation, and that's why it's frustrating. So anyway, Matthews, speaking of COVID, he kind of admits his conditioning isn't really where he wants it to be in relation to his positive COVID-19 test. But John, I just have to jump one thing in here. I thought it was reported that he was like asymptomatic and tested positive. I never ever got one report, and you can fill me in if I missed something, that he ever like got tested because he thought he had it or had any symptoms. But now they're making a story out of nowhere. Maybe it's just because we're itching for sports, but he admits his conditioning isn't where it was in relation to his positive COVID test. Was that the Matthews camp? Was that the media? Because I could have sworn he was asymptomatic and he he shouldn't have any conditioning issues. Or is that him not skating or not conditioning because?
I bet you his Fortnite conditioning is top notch.
So you're trying to take that angle. I'm not necessarily taking that angle. I'm just saying I thought it was asymptomatic and he should have had no issue because, again, it was like, oh, what a surprise. Matthews tested positive, even though he's got no symptoms. So
not a lot of ice in Arizona, right? Not a lot of ice in Arizona, and very easy to stay at home. Very easy, and he loves the video games. And apparently he loves the reality TV from what Freddie says. Freddie probably drove him nuts. He probably drove Freddie out of the house to California, thank God. That's honestly, I bet you that Fortnite conditioning is top notch right now. And that's because all he did was he stayed at home, and he may have, rollerbladed and swam and worked out and whatnot, but it's different in being in NHL conditioning shape and skating all the time and just staying in shape and making sure you're not fat, right? So
100%. I wanted more clarification on that. We're probably not going to get it. I just thought there's something fishy here, just like every other summer with Matthews and
It's
the
just a
Matthews
nice
camp.
way, man. It's just a nice way to say that he wasn't skating. He's like he did say that he was mostly asymptomatic. So I don't think he actually suffered very many of the symptoms. He did have to quarantine himself obviously for a couple weeks, but like I mean, being mostly asymptomatic, I think what I heard the interview or read the interview either way, and he had said that he just wasn't skating, right? And his conditioning wasn't up to par because he wasn't here in Toronto. Like,
For sure.
if he was here when Kapanen showed up at the beginning of when players were allowed to come back to their home cities, then I bet you Auston Matthews would be at top notch. But I expect that his conditioning will pick up. He doesn't have to. He's one of those special guys, right? Like,
Yeah.
he can just not that he can turn it on in a dime, but he can get it going a lot quicker than the average guy. So I don't think he'll have much of an issue once games get played. But yeah, I don't think it was anything to do with symptoms. It was just him not being on the ice.
Well, two positives to sandwich in between what is going to be a negative at the end here is we got Mikheyev on the ice for the first time in a long time, right? He suffered that injury back in, I think it was December, like before Christmas.
Yeah, the first game after Christmas, actually.
Okay, there you go. So Keefe's been on the ice with him, spending a ton of time, and recently says he's been looking awesome. I just had to throw that in there on top of the fact that this Nick Robertson chatter is picking up so much more now that we saw that cute little. Did you see this little highlight of him stripping the puck from Muzzin and then turning around and roofing it backhand on Freddie Anderson in practice? And of course, everybody has to go nuts, but it does put a smile on your face when you see a young prospect do something like that in camp, right? But there's our two little bits of positive Leaf news. As we know, we're getting back into it. It's a week and a half away from that 8 p.m. Montreal game coming up. But if you had anything to say on that, let me know, because I'm going to move on to one last thing.
Mikheyev, he from what I've read, he's looked really good. His shot is actually improved, if you can believe it or not. So like obviously when you have surgery, you can land on either side of the equation, the plus side or the negative side, depending on how you rehab it and how things the luck of the draw turns out, right? How your body responds to the surgery. And it seems that Mikheyev has turned out obviously on the plus side, from one, for having an excellent surgeon take care of him, and for two, just having a workman's like attitude. Jake Muzzin said he was training with this guy and he is a beast in the gym. You're getting a different Mikheyev than you got originally, and we got a good Mikheyev before.
Yeah.
This guy was a body on the boards before, taking pucks from people and putting it in front of the net, and even in putting it in the net before he got hurt. So Jake Muzzin was singing this guy's praises. I can't wait to see Mikheyev back on the ice, and I'm just so proud so happy to hear that that wrist is not suffered, or that shot has not suffered from that nasty injury we witnessed, because man, that was scary.
Yeah, and I'm the proud one here because Nick Robertson is a fellow, not a Peterborite, but he spent the last couple of seasons in the same hometown as me.
Oh,
go Pete's, go! Hey, listen, I grew up in Whitby, so I'm a diehard.
2015 Memorial Cup champions.
Go Gens, go! I still remember the games that it's Pete's and Gens. It's always hard to figure out who I'm really cheering for, right? But yeah, man, Nick Robertson spent his last couple of seasons here in Peterborough, and it's just been a nice, like, fast trajectory. This guy's projected to be a top 6 forward at some point in time in his career, and we're not rushing him, right? We're really not rushing him, but the way he's shot out of a cannon, he reminds me of like a Trevor Moore. Not a very big guy, but he throws his body around, like maybe 5'10". That's the biggest he is. I don't think any stats pages, I'm trying to say, have him listed at anything higher than that. And I think he's around like a $180, $190. Like, he's not a small guy. So I like the idea of this kid with a little bit of momentum. And when you're kind of playing with that adrenaline because you're just a young kid and you don't have anything to lose, it's fun to see that in this market. But I always want to slow it down and say, like, okay, like, stop. We've got enough good young prospects that have developed and that we've maybe even had to push up too quick. So just leave this guy alone. And if he doesn't play a single game this season, that's still okay with me. But boy, am I ever just happy and proud too, just to hear the chatter picking up that much more as training camp picks up. Like, good for this kid. Number 89 too. What a greasy number. Oh my God.
Alex McGinley, 89.
That's there you go.
Yeah, so that's interesting. The last time I remember seeing that number in play, especially for the Maple Leafs, I believe he was 89 with the Maple Leafs as well. It's interesting because the NHL has evolved, and not that it's evolved beyond very large players, but there are some very high-skilled, smaller guys in the NHL, and Brad Marchand comes to mind. Gritty guy, can score the puck, can strip the puck, can go up and down the ice, and he's not very big, but he's tough in another sense. And so I'll give it to there's Gallagher as well. I'll give it to Robertson because you can't count the smaller guys out, and anyone who has a little bit of a tough side and a scoring touch, I'll give him a chance on the team. Max Domi as well, right? Max Domi has a little bit of maybe some other issues on the ice, but all for all intents and purposes, Nick Robertson looks pretty good. Before we get off the NHL completely, I know we're going to talk about the broadcasting issue with the NBC, but Pastrnak unfit to play after being on the ice with his teammates the day before. So what does that say? Right?
Yeah, it must have. You know how they're going through these. You have to have 2 swabs a week or something like that. Essentially, he must have had a test come back positive and have to quarantine, because we're assuming everybody that's unfit to play. This is the other conversation that we could spend the whole podcast getting into is the slippery slope with unfit to play and how quickly you can just deem a guy that and no questions asked, right? So I'm going to have to assume he contracted COVID. Like, that's the best I can assume. If he's now, within 1 day being deemed unfit to play, you would assume they would be forthright in telling us if he has an upper body, lower body injury, like he's twisted an ankle and he's actually got an injury. But at the same time, I think that's where the slippery slope is, and people are a little bit worried that by using this, you're going to be able to cover up injuries or essentially cook the books on that kind of stuff for a bit. I heard that debated on a radio show, and on one side, or at the beginning of the conversation, I was kind of thinking, like, who cares? And by the end, they did have me convinced that this does have a little bit of a stink to it if you let it marinate.
Yeah, it's definitely going to have a bit of pushback from bettors, right? Like the NHL just had that big deal with Vegas and online betting and whatnot, and guys like me who use DraftKings, they're going to want proper injury updates. They're not going to want unfit to play unless that is the designation for COVID. Right. And I think it's got to be that with Pasta, because he was over in Czech, if I believe that's where he's from. He was at home either way up until recently, and he flew over here. And his first day back was yesterday with the Bruins, and he was on the ice with his teammates. He was on the ice with Marchand.
I didn't know that.
And I mean, I assume he had a negative test before he came back, but it could have been a false negative, or something could have happened on the plane, or we don't know. But I do know that Pastrnak was practicing with the team yesterday, and then today he was scheduled a Zoom meeting with media, and that was canceled, and he was designated unfit to play.
Well,
so
the other thing, though, John, would be if he has to be deemed unfit to play and he's only been at camp once, did he either get it from a player at camp, or did he just give it to the players at camp? And how many?
Well, that's my question.
And that's why I wonder if people are already thinking, did he get COVID, or did he hurt himself? Like, we shouldn't even be spending so much time thinking about it, because it's going to make us crazy, because there is a million options, right? Like, you never know what happened.
I think with the Zoom meeting being canceled, I think that all signs point to a positive test. I think if it was an injury, that he would have gone and met with the media, right? He just wouldn't have mentioned the injury.
So then what do you think comes next? If he's got COVID, he's positive COVID. We don't want to.
Well, what they're doing with athletes is they don't have to quarantine the full 14 days if they have 2 negative tests in a row. So
I was talking with the rest of the Bruins, right? I wasn't finished.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think everyone has a round of testing. Like everyone was tested. Everyone who was close to Pastrnak. I think the guys who picked him up from the airport. I think the guys he was on the ice with. Anyone, the coaching staff, anyone that he was within 6 feet of has now had a test, and they'll have the results. And I think if there's a widespread outbreak on the Boston Bruins, we'll know it in a couple days, because then you'll see a bunch of players deemed unfit to play. and that is obviously going to be the COVID designation. Hopefully, I hope they don't take advantage of it and just deem everybody for whatever injury unfit, because and the reason why I say this is because Steven Stamkos came out that he had an LBI, a lower body injury, and that's something we're used to hearing, and so he wasn't deemed unfit to play. We were told what was going on with him. It was an injury. It wasn't sickness, right? So I'm hoping that that's the COVID designation only.
All right. Yeah, it's again, it's just crazy times. I try to think, all right, this is the most logical explanation, and then I think, well, then you'd have to take X step and Y step, but these players are kind of being treated in a different way, and it's hard to keep up with. I even have it written down unfit to play and what it means. I didn't expect to get into this much with hockey, but what's your take on the just quickly the American broadcasters coming up and taking our jobs, man? What's going on here?
Well, it's Hockey Night in Canada, brought to you by NBC and all the American broadcasters.
Now, you read the
Right?
article. Tell me what's going on in that, because I didn't get to see what's going on. I thought that doesn't make a lot of sense. American broadcasters on Hockey Night in Canada, but
So NBC was expecting there to be an American hub city, and they were going to have it staffed fully by them. And then when the NHL unilaterally made the decision without discussing it with the broadcasters to move both cities to Canada, they weren't very happy. So this is pretty much deemed as their way of getting back at the NHL. They're sending 80 people to cover the games from NBC. So, and a lot of Canadian broadcasters aren't happy because they've been out of work, and that would have been jobs for them, camera operators and production assistants and so on and so forth. I mean, the big jobs are filled out. We know who's going to be calling the games. Those guys work for Sportsnet and TSN, right? But it's the little jobs that we're talking about that would have gone to guys like you and me, guys who have broadcasting diplomas and have worked their asses off to get where they're at. And it's not our jobs because we haven't gotten to that level yet, but I sympathize. I can feel for them because I can feel like if it was my job taken from me, I'd be pretty damn pissed. I don't know about you.
yeah, I'd be pissed. And again, it's just part of the COVID times, right? We kind of live in a really strange kind of world, and that's where you wouldn't even have this conversation about referees at the bubble with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the frustration there either if it wasn't for these strange times, or really any other conversation we've had, right? That's why we can't wait to have sports just here and in our face, because everything else building up to it has this air of, oh, but what about this, and just the factor of COVID attached to everything. Now, before we started the show, you
I was
had
going to say it's an era of pessimism. That's what it is, right? Everyone's pessimistic about things starting, and until it starts, we can't believe it's going to happen.
That's correct. I think so too. So before we started the show, you had a rumor to kind of share, and it seems to kind of come to fruition about like 15 minutes before we began to record. So fill us in kind of this is pertaining to the Jays and their home games coming up. We really didn't have a firm idea up until today on where they were going to be playing in the 62 game schedule. So what's going on there?
In Ontario MP Lisa McLeod went on TSN radio in Ottawa earlier today and said that the Toronto Blue Jays have been granted permission to have their home games at the Rogers Centre, and so that's provincial level. And then just before we decided to sit down, actually about an hour ago to the minute right now at 5:42 p.m., Doug Ford stepped out to the podium and said that the Toronto Blue Jays have been granted permission by the provincial government to have their home games in Toronto at the Rogers Centre. So the Blue Jays have yet to confirm that they'll be hosting games in Toronto, but the alternative isn't really pretty, and I think the Jays are waiting for the federal government to approve because of how many people are going to have to fly in and out of Canada. Yeah. But to have the permission of the provincial government in the place where the games are actually going to be held, that's step one. And I would assume that this train is now moving in a direction where it's not going to be stopped. We're going to be seeing games in Toronto so long as the MLB is running, so long as they can keep the teams sequestered, and they're going to have to follow some pretty strict guidelines here in Toronto. I assume they're not going to be able to go out and do things like they can in the States, but it's going to be interesting to see baseball back in Toronto, and a little semblance of normalcy for us sports fans.
Yeah, if you can call crowd noise and nobody in the stands normalcy, but I can't imagine what it would be like for the players.
I didn't mind, man. Did you check out the highlights from the inter-squad game for the Blue Jays?
No,
They
but that's
they
my
pumped
next
in
point.
crowd noise. They pumped in crowd noise,
How did it sound?
and you know what? I didn't even notice it until they mentioned. Right, it just sounded like I was watching the Jays. Right, like I was just like watching a Jays game. And I mean, when they say it, you're just like, oh yeah, that's the noise, and there's no one there. Right, and I think it helps build the atmosphere, obviously, for the players. Right, so.
Yeah, until you look out though into the stands, there's nobody there. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, it's better than in the KBO where they've got cardboard cutouts, right? Like cardboard cutouts.
And robots. Did you see the robots dancing at all, John?
I did not see the robots, but yeah,
flip it to you.
that does not surprise me that they've got robots in the KBO. You know what did surprise me before we get too deep into baseball, and I tweeted about it. NASCAR. NASCAR surprised me.
That's a surprise. I didn't think we were talking NASCAR today. Let's hear it.
Yeah, no, we're not really going to, except for the fact that they had a full GD stadium of people at their last race. 30,000 people. Are you kidding me? This is in America where you cannot get control of COVID, and 30,000 people are there watching cars go fast in a circle?
Making another left turn. Making another left turn. Making another left turn.
Like, I mean, I know that New Zealand has full stadiums for their rugby matches, but get New Zealand out of your mind until you can get COVID under control. I lost it. I was not, I mean, the KBO doesn't have fans. Bundesliga didn't have fans. And now like NASCAR, fast cars think that they can go out and pack a stadium. Like, come on, get your heads out of your asses. This is why America has problems with COVID-19. They cannot get around the fact that you cannot live a normal life. Things are not normal. It has not been normal for me and you. I have been at home so much in these last 4 months that, you know, when I do get to go out, I don't know if I'll be as social as I used to be. It's going to be so awkward.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine because you'll be just itching to talk to people. You'll be more social. You'll be thinking, oh, like I gotta meet this person before I never get the chance to meet anybody in the world. Man, I'll be stuck in my home for another 50 years.
In my cave, yeah.
In my cave, yeah. But what did you think of those? You mentioned them earlier. The interleague games. You watched a couple of those. Man,
the inter-squad game
looking good, eh? So far, they're looking hot.
Yeah, Team Bo versus Team Gritch, and I don't know how much Gritchick is a team or locker room leader right now after his Aubrey Huff stuff. But Team Bo is looking good. First pitch, Bo Bichette blasted a home run.
I heard that.
And I mean, like you can't get any better than that. I mean, it's just you look at this team and you wonder, and you're like, man, where are we going to be in 5 years? Are we talking about the Toronto Blue Jays AL East champions? Are we talking about the Toronto Blue Jays in the World Series? Now. We're going to have Nate Pearson as a starting pitcher in these 60 games. And it's going to be Ryu and Pearson.
Because there's nowhere else for him to play either. That's the best part. No more dicking around like the Jays are used to. That's the best part. Bring him up and play him. We got 62 games. Let's prove what we got. Like, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be something else. It's going to be really interesting to see exactly what happens and where the Blue Jays fall in this shortened season. But I think they got a really good shot, and not that they're going to be playing against their own team, obviously. So these inter-squad games, they're just a glimpse and a little bit of a reprieve from the lack of live sports. I don't like the fact that they just end the innings whenever they want in the inter-squad game. So I know you didn't watch, but the game finished 6-4 because Shoemaker reached his pitch limit. There was 2 outs. There was a man on base who just got a single, and the tying run was coming to the plate, and they're just like, game over.
Really?
I'm like, really?
What's the point of that, though? What's the safety precaution?
Well, it's Shoemaker was at his pitch limit. Right. So, and there was 1 out left in the inning. Simeon Woods Richardson was already warmed up in the bullpen. He could have come out.
That's what I'm saying. Like, do we to be people in the bullpen to warm up or something? Like,
no, it was just nope. Game's over. Shoemaker reached his pitch limit, and Team Bo won 6-4 in the 6th inning or the 5th inning or something. It was. I mean, like I said, they're just getting started. They're just getting a taste of it. But I guess I got to bring up Matt. I mentioned his name, Matt Shoemaker. Man, he had that freak injury last season. He was pitching amazing, and then
Comebacker?
he was covering first,
Oh,
and he
okay.
blew his ACL. I believe going back to the mound.
Nice. Okay. Ouch.
Not even
Ouch.
covering the bag, but going back to the mound. After covering the bag, he blew his ACL, and he was like 2-1 with a sub-2 ERA. And to begin the season, like people were talking about Matt Shoemaker having a resurgence with the Toronto Blue Jays, and then he blows his ACL, and he looked really, really good against his own team. So if we can get Matt Shoemaker back at that level, and so you're going Ryu, Pearson, Shoemaker, and you're only filling out the last 2 spots, and it's 60 games. So who's to say you run a 5-man rotation?
Honestly, I don't even know if you're gonna need it. How many nights are they getting off in the 62 games? I think I read something.
They have 66 days to play these games.
Yeah, so maybe you do need a 5-man rotation. It's hard to say. It all depends. It all depends on who's in the rotation. If it's 4 guys, if there's guys that maybe aren't, depends on how they pitch, right? If they aren't having high pitch limit or high pitch counts in games, or if they're not prone to that type thing, or if they have higher stamina, I guess you could kind of deal with that, but. Maybe you
got a mix of Trent Thornton, Sam Gaviglio, oh man, why am I forgetting names? You got a Ryan Barucki, a bunch of guys who
Ken Giles is a bullpen guy.
Well, no. These guys are fringe starters, right? Gaviglio, Barucki, and Trent Thornton are all fringe starters, right? And guys that the Blue Jays have invested a lot of time in the past couple of years as starters. So, if any of those guys can fill out a couple of the spots, even if you use a Trent Thornton with a Sam Gaviglio, right? So Thornton starts the game, goes 5 innings, and you put Gaviglio in. And then he gets you to the
tandeming. Like whenever you start Thornton, you're guaranteeing a Gaviglio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that. And that's not my like that. I can't claim that idea. I heard it on a radio show, but it's something that because Thornton is a high fastball guy and Gaviglio is a low breaking ball guy.
So it's great for when you start getting through the second round of the order. Yeah.
Yeah, you're changing the eye level, right? So those are 2 guys who could be paired together. And then if Ryan Barucki can get over those elbow issues, man, he's shown that he's got the ability to be a starter in major leagues. So it'll be interesting to see what the Blue Jays can do beyond. But they've also got other pitching prospects coming up: Alec Manoah, Simeon Woods, Richardson, Anthony Kay.
I'm focused on is exactly. There's another one too. Oh my gosh.
Well, I don't know if Van Eyck is on the roster this year, but he's the one they drafted.
There's another man. I had a list here a while ago. It's gonna take too much time to pull up, obviously. But yeah, like the benefit of watching this type of season, again, we've said it before, is like any team can go off. So these guys that are so young, it's much like the Nick Robertson conversation. They've got so much really to prove and nothing to lose, right? They're just young kids and they're gonna play on adrenaline for the most part. And they've got a young manager who seems happy-go-lucky and wants to see them kind of learn as much as he wants to see them succeed. He wants to see them go through the tough times. So this is a perfect type of season for like a Charlie Montoyo and his boys to just get some camaraderie. You know what I mean? All of a sudden you go from maybe not thinking you're the greatest team in the league, and you look into your organization and you throw a random season like this into the bunch. It's going to kickstart some of these guys' confidence and maturity and just their expectations of themselves as you go up to the next season and the next season. I feel like it's a nice little it's flint to the fire, right? It's added a little bit of juice to something that we've been saying for 3, 4, 5 years. Oh, it's coming. Maybe when they finally deal Stroman and Sanchez for something. And do you remember when we finally just came to grips with that old team and said, okay, let's get rid of them? Well, feels like we're moving on so quick already. It's so awesome to see. But pump the brakes. Always got to pump the brakes. It's really exciting, eh?
It's definitely a different era, and I mean, it's good. It's good to see. I still follow Stroman on Twitter. I still see his chirps all the time, and him and
he was in there recently.
Yeah, I believe it was him and Grichuk were going back and forth. And I see Stroman's little brother, by the way, who is hitting bombs, so he's not a pitcher. That is interesting little tidbit. So we'll see if little brother Stroman gets to the league, and if he can hit bombs in the league.
I can just picture. You know how Marcus isn't really built like his dad? He's kind of more.
Could you imagine?
If you were to picture,
I've seen his dad.
Usually, kids are built like one parent or the other. So Marcus is maybe built more like his mom's side of the family. And imagine this little slugger coming in. Oh my God, he's built like his dad.
Just cannons.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh my God,
Yeah.
the next Vladdy, like just a massive beast. Anyway,
Next
you
Frank
piqued my
Thomas,
interest.
right?
Yes,
Next Frank Thomas.
yeah, as we talked
Yeah,
about the other day.
we've talked about the Big Hurt a few times. Actually, funny enough, I was playing MLB The Show and I got the Big Hurt, his gold legend card,
Nice. The
just
84
randomly.
Athletics.
The 84, yep, the Big Hurt. Yeah, I forgot where we were going here.
We're going to the NBA, to be honest with you, buddy. Unless you got more to talk about for the Jays, because the only other note I had was
Well,
just to
we
remind
got
you.
a little bit about Vladdy, right?
Oh,
I
and
think
Rowdy, definitely.
yeah, the Vlad and Rowdy, and then yeah, so Vlad moving over to first base, leaving a vacancy over at third, and it's tentatively filled by Travis Shaw, but I think we're going to see the number one pick by the Blue Jays in there. Maybe not for a majority of these games, but 60 games, 66 days, you're going to have to use your entire player pool,
Get some
right, at some
experience.
point. So
That's what I'm
so
just
he's going
saying.
to have to get in there and get some experience at third base. But let's talk about first. You brought it up, Rowdy Tellez. He was the first baseman after the Blue Jays had walked away from Justin Smoke. And now the Blue Jays move Vladimir Guerrero there. And, Rowdy's sweating a little bit. And he has his bat has spoken volumes for him so far since
Yeah.
they've been at the Rogers Center. You guys just blasting homers. I think he's got a comfortable platoon spot, like you said to me before, but Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to get the bulk of the starts at first base, and the diving stop and the stretch and dig on I don't know the shortstop's name, but the guy playing short in the inter squad game, made an awesome play, ran across second base, and then fired one to Vlad, and Vlad had to stretch out of the way to grab it. Just a great play by both of them. I think Vlad's going to do just fine at first base, a lot better than he was doing at third because there's a lot less having to move around.
Well, and we talked about it. He seems to be one of those guys who wants that extra load. He seemed to want to excel at third and was trying almost too hard at times. So put him in a spot at first where he can kind of make the clutch moves when he needs to, but he doesn't have to go kind of put other teammates in harm's way to do it, as you mentioned before, right? He can kind of get it done on his own time, make little highlight plays without being too dangerous about it.
And then, yeah, Auston Martin, with the flow at third base, I think that hair got to get a little bit of a trim. If you're going to be putting the ball cap on, I don't know if he goes with some braids or something, but he was playing a little bit of third base, and yeah, like I said, man, with so few days in between the games, you're going to see Auston Martin at third base. But the thing is how soon, and if he really shows up, does he steal the position from Travis Shaw?
Only remains to be seen. Again, he's a young stud, so they fly out to Boston to face the Red Sox in July 21st and 22nd, and then the season starts up 2 days later. So be ready for that.
Is it oh my goodness? It's July 16th. That's 5 days.
Yeah, John, our next pod might be the one, and get excited for that, ladies and gentlemen. On to the NBA before we run out of time, because we do want to touch again just a little bit on the Dak stuff at the end. So we got NBA and then a little NFL, but let's just talk about the players. They've kind of started opening this anonymous tip hotline. Hey, John, it's already been used maybe a handful or two of times. Tell me what you know before I'll tell you what I know.
It's the snitch line. Let's call it what it is. It's the snitch line, and I can't believe it got used, man. Honestly, I mean, the bro in me, the dude in me was just nah, no one's going to use this thing because, they wouldn't want it used on them. But somebody did it, man. Somebody went and used the snitch line, and I don't know if anything's come of it. But you know what? There was an interesting spin on it, and it could be players using it against coaches, right? Because they're uncomfortable saying something about their coach not wearing a mask at practice because they don't want to get reprimanded. They don't want to see if they're showing their coach up. So they call the snitch line and they say that the coach isn't wearing a mask, and then the NBA takes control of it and he never has to hear of it, right?
It's like threatening your parents to call children's aid when you're I never did that.
Go ahead. I don't want you anyway.
My parents used to say, hey, they'll come take you from me and they'll make it real easy on both of us. You know what I mean? Call my bluff out real quick.
Yeah.
Well, I had an interesting one for you, John. I'm going to try to keep you hooked on this, but Jimmy Butler our boy Jimmy, out in Miami, was reported for a noise complaint last week. Well, in the bubble, right? Because we know the players started kind of arriving to the bubble within the last week and a half. They've been arriving and getting comfortable there, and we'll talk later on about how comfortable they're getting. But he received a complaint about a loud thumping. A security guard did, in the hotel that the Heat were staying at. So after knocking at the door of the room where this suspected noise was coming from, he's greeted by a sweaty Jimmy Butler with a basketball. Like, picture this, in the middle of a hotel room workout. Jimmy Butler is like opening up the door, responding to some sort of noise complaint coming from his room, and there he is standing there, tall as he is. Obviously, he's an NBA basketball player, so that would shock you alone. He's just standing there with his basketball all sweaty. Imagine that, though. That's the kind of anonymous tips that are going on. They're not as maybe as sinister as we thought at first. They might just be as simple as that. But Jimmy Butler's here. As long as that's the only reason he's not, or that the thumping is going on, it's just a basketball, I'm good, right? Like, you're okay with that. But I just want to shine some light on the story. Maybe it's not so bad. It could just be simple stuff like that.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because the guys are trying to get in as much work as possible, and guys like Jimmy Butler, they can probably afford to have a room with a basketball court in it, or have one installed in there, put a hoop in his room so he can get shots up.
Honestly, I just picture he's in a suite dribbling around the bathtub and just having fun. You know what I mean? That's between the beds.
He worked up a pretty good sweat to just be, if he was sweaty, just covered, just like like that. I would assume that he's got to have some sort of setup in his room. And they were talking about that. I believe it was on First Take a couple days ago. They're talking about NBA players having different setups. The NBA actually tried to hide that Dame Lillard was in a suite. Damian Lillard has a suite, so it's not like these guys are like in like not everyone's in the single room, smaller areas. So the star players definitely have their run of it, and you can only imagine what's inside that suite, because there are multiple rooms. There's a lot of space. I bet you that there are some players who have a basketball net installed in their room so they can get shots up, man. It sounds ridiculous, but we're talking about the realm of ridiculous right now. We're talking about Florida. Let's bring it up. We talked about it off the top of the show. The hot boxed bubble, report on The Athletic had said that the NBA is not testing for marijuana, and the players are taking advantage of that. So how much weed do you think is exactly inside of Disneyland right now?
I think it's a lot, and it's not even just that they're taking advantage of it. I feel like this report opened my eyes to, it's like what I was saying in the intro, like the culture of marijuana, not just in the NBA, but in all professional sports, how it's really looked at. And it goes hand in hand with the legalization of it kind of in almost every state and in every province here in Canada. A lot of the players that we know and love to watch every night are using these things as vices. And now more than ever, as Al Harrington pointed out, he said a couple of things in this article, but he mentioned that throughout the season, when you've had a tough game or tons of different issues where you could go home and see your family and kind of digest the evening and get back to basics and chill and ground yourself. He says a lot of these players are going to need, whether they self-medicate with cannabis, whether it's for pain, etc. Like, they're talking pounds and pounds. If you're interested, I would recommend getting a subscription to the article or to The Athletic and reading the article.
It's
eye-opening, because again, like just the tone right off the top, calculating the amount of pounds that you'd need to get through what might be a total of 82 games. They said the longest players may stay in the NBA bubble. And it was actually breaking down the math of the pounds of weed per, like usually 2 grams of weed in a blunt. Like, it was talking very specific numbers. And I thought, okay, I've never been so, I've never read through an article so fast with such kind of like motivation, because I didn't think that this was the type of information the public was privy to. Right? Does that make any sense, John? I was kind of like floored that it was just out there right off the bat. Sorry, go ahead.
I think if the NBA had their way, the public wouldn't be privy to that kind of information, but that's how reporting works, right? As soon as if the information is available and your sources are reliable and okay with you releasing it, then the public get to hear it. The article said that there was stuff probably being smuggled and everything from DVD players to Arizona cans. I seen Marc Gasol carrying in a Nescafe gigantic box that had his Nespresso machine in it. And my question is was the Nespresso machine in there?
Hey, Mark.
Or was that the team's way of smuggling in all the weed they needed for the entire team?
Maybe I was gonna
Because you
say,
could put
hey,
a lot in there.
how'd you get so skinny, Mark? Like, you know what I mean? Maybe he spent all summer hitting the reefer, not eating any food, and he's just turned into a skeleton, right? Because that's just another story.
Skinny Marcus
Skinny
yeah.
Marcus All. The thing I wanted to point out too, again, it really hit home to me when Al Harrington. I'm just going to read a snippet right from the Athletic article. It says, "Bring more than you think you're going to need." This is him kind of advising any NBA player who'd be listening. So it says, you might have that teammate who's never smoked and might want to try it since they're stuck in a bubble. So you might be supplying other people. Like, that's how freely they're talking about marijuana and its use in the bubble here in Florida. So when you sent that to me, I thought that's a joke, and then I noticed it was an Athletic article, and I realized, we've got some a deep dive here. I didn't expect it to be that much of a deep dive, and I can guarantee you that NBA, it's not specific to the NBA. That's every league. That's every professional sports league that you watch, because that's most of the kind of way society is going now with legalization of that kind of stuff.
Okay, so your unnamed superstar player, NBA, never smoked weed. Which guy are you going to? Random, like, which guy do you think of?
Don't
Which
put me
guy's
on
your
no, you can't
which
put
guy's
me
your
on the
guy?
spot like that, because I don't want to speculate.
You know who my guy is?
Who?
Just signed by the Lakers. J.R. Smith. He's going to have the good stuff for sure.
Yeah, if you're going just based on things that they've said in the past, then heck yeah. But I don't, you know what I mean? I don't want to speculate just because somebody's
Man,
one way or
J.R.
another.
Smith
But
just got another line of income. I'm going to tell you right now, like 100%. This guy got signed by the Lakers. He's going to go play alongside LeBron James and maybe win another championship.
How do you
And
know
he gets to
this?
be the dude. And he gets to be the dude that's going to be supplying. Come on, it's J.R. Smith. Have you looked at him? This guy, it's like Nate Diaz in Weed with the UFC. I mean, I don't know.
I'm
It's
just
not
not
like
trying to judge a book by its cover. That's
it's
all.
not like everybody is going to be so obvious with it, but I mean, like, if you had to guess somebody in the league, it's gonna be JR for me. I mean, that's the guy I'm
No
going to.
question.
If I honestly, if I'm someone in the bubble and I need a little bit of that piff, then I'm going to go knock on JR's door and see what he's got cooking.
All right, I'll keep
Because
that in
I
mind.
guarantee the door opens up and it's just like a cloud it's like the movie How High,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's just
It's just
it's exactly
Pineapple
what it is. I'm
Express
telling you.
floating out the door.
100%, man. It's not like you can call Seth Rogen up and get him to come over to the bubble, deliver you some good stuff. But
Hey, that was a decent impression. That was not
it's
bad.
the I don't know. I've never tried to do Seth Rogen impression, but yeah.
What are you hearing about Disney wanting to open up this park? Does that cause any concern for you? Because we kind of thought the players were, quarantined here. What does that make you think?
Okay, so I haven't looked too much into this, but initial reports released saying Disney is planning on opening up the park, and I mean, I can only give you my initial impression on finding that news out, and it completely negates the bubble. I don't care if they're in one side of the park and in another side of the park. It doesn't matter. It's too close of access, and the virus is too rampant in Florida for any of them to have access. I mean, like, these guys are only looking to use Disney until what, October? And this is Florida we're talking about. You're not talking about Toronto, where you have snow 6 months out of the year. The NBA is obviously paying you, and it might be a big bite to your pocketbook, but they're still paying you for the use. It's better than not having any money at all. Let's keep it safe, and let's not risk it. It's not just the NBA. The MLS is there as well. Let's not risk the pro sports and the money that you are already given to host these guys by being greedy and wanting to open up the park to the public. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah, I think you've got me convinced, because I'm just keep picturing these players, like you've said in the past, riding around on, roller coasters, operating them themselves, and I'm like, well, no, not if the general public's allowed in there. They can't be operating these things. Like, I thought they're
Could
gonna
you
have
imagine?
fun at Disney. I thought they're allowed to go out and have fun. That's the point of, like, saying, hey, let's, you have to be from your away from your family for X amount of time. Yes, you have a chance to win a championship, but hey, you're at Disney, so it's at least open to the to the bubble. But if they allow the general public in, it's going to take a lot of convincing for me to go on the side of split it up and allow both in, you're going to really have to convince me, because I'm kind of more on your side right now. It doesn't make a lot of sense to, like, if I'm imagining these guys having a good time at Disney, I can't also imagine the general public being intermingled. We were already discussing last podcast. Sorry that I have one final thought on here.
Mhm.
We're already discussing that the Disney employees and the players was enough mixing. We didn't think that was really easy to get done. So for them to then say the next time we're recording, oh, also we might let the general public in, it's like, okay, now you're messing me up here. I don't know what to think.
Yeah, and then there's an accidental mix-up where someone gets shifted in a Disney employee gets shifted in the bubble, but then they get shifted in the general public by accident, and then they come back to the bubble, they bring the virus in, and then you've infected everybody, and boom, mind blown. You can just see exactly how it could go, and it's not a safe thing to think about. I want, before we get out of here, one more thing about being able to smoke at Disney, man. The article said it. Could you imagine a little puff pass and then going to the Star Wars,
Oh
right?
God.
Like.
I was just there 2 Aprils ago, and I would have liked to have been able to, have some of that just to enjoy. But the thing is, when you're over there, and you don't need any vices, you don't really need alcohol or anything like that, because you're just enjoying every moment on vacation. So I agree and I disagree at the same time. I also,
When you're living there, it's different, I have to say.
yeah,
Vacation is one thing. You're going there and trying to enjoy everything with
yeah, you
the
don't need
clearest of
vices.
minds. But if you have to live at Disney, I mean, like that means seeing Mickey's face a lot, dude.
I know,
Like,
and he's
a
not the
lot.
best looking mouse.
So I mean, like, it could get annoying to have to, like, I could see where I'd need a pound of weed to live at Disney for 70 or 80 days. I can promise you that.
There might not be a mouse that you like to see a lot, but there is one pelican that people really like to see a lot. And reported this afternoon, it seems as though Zion Williams, you like this segue, John, has left the NBA bubble to attend urgent family matters. So those Pelicans, as I mentioned in that awesome segue, say he's expected to rejoin the team at some point during the restarted season, but they don't have an issued timetable for when yet. So just call him another David Pasternak, right? He's ineligible to play. We don't know exactly when he's going to rejoin. It's a quote urgent family matter. That could mean his family has COVID, so maybe he doesn't want to be coming back too quick because he might need to quarantine. There's a million options, a million answers. We shouldn't over digest it, but he's unfit to play.
I'm just going to take it from the aspect of the Pelicans. I'm not going to speculate on what's going on with his family or what's going on with himself, but from the aspect of the Pelicans, this is detrimental. This guy is like, I mean, your team has been getting healthy. Ball has been playing well. Ingram has been playing well. But this guy is the reason that you're making the push for the playoffs, and you need him for every single one of these 8 remaining games to get yourself enough pardon me, to get yourself enough wins in order to get yourself into the playoffs. Right now, they still only have a 12% chance, I believe, of making the playoffs. They're a few games back, so they need Zion Williamson there as much as possible. So not having him there for however many amount of days, or if they don't have him for any of the games, they need him for all 8 of those games, Ryan. So this is how big this is.
Absolutely.
Depending on how long he has to quarantine, him not coming back, I think, is a non-starter for the Pelicans. I think that if that was going to happen, I don't know what's going on there, because like if that's going to happen, if Zion Williamson isn't coming back, you can count the Pelicans out. They're done.
I was waiting for the clarification. I was actually going to ask a question here. Like, if I'm not mistaken, like there is no immediate playoffs. Like, these guys actually have to get in. I didn't think the Pelicans were in the same boat as, like, say, Columbus in the NHL or Montreal or Pittsburgh, where like they're not Pittsburgh, sorry, but the teams that are kind of on the outside that got added in. I kind of forget that like there is an actual 8-game season to play before the playoffs. It's a weird concept. Do you have any, like, is there a reason why they need to play those 8 games other than that? Like they couldn't have just decided? It's way back now. We can't change the past. But what was just remind me why they couldn't have decided to go to the playoffs first?
For the Western Conference. The Eastern Conference was basically decided, but it was the Western Conference, and the lower the lower half of the Western Conference was very, very crowded. So they had no choice.
Race.
Yeah, it wasn't very clear, so they had to. And I mean, Zion really made a point in that, right? Like cutting the Pelicans' chances off with the momentum that they had going into the break. And it was some very, very strong momentum. So cutting that off just wasn't palatable for the NBA. And I'm sure there was some pushback from the teams. So it was mostly the Western Conference, though. The Eastern Conference was basically decided.
Okay, yeah, but that conversation literally all comes full circle because now we sit here thinking, okay, well, hopefully Zion's back in time, if at all for the Pelicans. And like you said, if he's not back, probably by the beginning, it might be too late. He needs to be there for all 8 games for him to make that impact. Should we move on to the NFL or should we save it? Because we've got really 2 points. One of them's big. One of them's just a simple simple name change. It's something that's been long coming. So do you have a huge take on the Washington football team changing their name, or is that just simple to you?
Well, I mean, it's cut and dry that they should have changed the name and that they're now going to change the name. We've talked about why. It's the money talks, right? We said it, $680 billion of investment went against Washington to force this name change. A little bit of news recently out of there. They have recently hired a law firm to go through all of the articles of the entire team. They're doing a clean sweep. They're making sure they do this right, and they only have to do this once. So it's going to be interesting what comes of it, what rule changes, what bylaws have to change. But yeah, no real news on it right now, other than the fact that, finally the name is going to be changed, and hopefully teams like Cleveland and Atlanta follow suit with a name change and getting out of the era of public racism. Really is what it is. It's accepted racism. It may not be what we consider blatant, but it's definitely whitewashed accepted racism. It's something that we've become okay with over time.
We've excused it for
Yeah.
so long by saying it's an homage to this, it's an homage to that. It's really not. And I wanted to add in, I think I might have said it before, but like Dan Snyder wasn't the only one kind of accused of this. He seemed to be the forefront of this because he kept saying, I'm not changing the name, I'm not changing the name. But when FedEx, Pepsi, and Nike are all threatening to end relationships with the team, I think teams like the Chicago Blackhawks, the Eskimos, and the Chiefs were the only other 3 that I had on my list. You mentioned the Braves and the Indians already. Like those 5 teams in professional sports, you could even consider the Golden State Warriors, although they've done a good job at eliminating their actual logo. Some people still want to, they would like to argue that, if you're using the Warriors namesake, you have to be very careful. My point is, if you get that type of pressure from those, big companies and big sponsors threatening to pull their relationship with you, like who knows what comes in the NHL with the Blackhawks and many of those, like even WHL teams named like Moose Jaw Warriors. You've got a lot of them in those minor leagues that would have that same problem. So it's a trickle down, but that's all I had to say on that, really.
And it just doesn't make any sense as to why this wasn't done sooner. I mean, just imagine the amount of merchandise money he's going to make on the rebrand.
Yeah.
Like everybody's got to buy a new jersey, anyone who's a Washington fan, and they're going to want the new jersey. They're going to want the new hats. They're going to want the new jersey. They're going to, it's just people who are sports broadcasters like me and you who were not comfortable having that logo and that name around them in their backgrounds, are going to be open to buying stuff and displaying stuff. And it's money. So and it seems Dan Snyder is all about money. So I don't understand why he wasn't okay with this before. Second point, we got to get to Dak Prescott, right?
That's it. It's just to fill anybody in. Like Prescott and the Cowboys were about to reach a deal. It sounded like Prescott was like his agent, handle everything, wanted to jump in last minute, and he missed a deadline that kind of a massive deal passed him by that most people would have signed in a heartbeat. Correct? If you're Dak Prescott, you would have signed that deal. If you would have got involved in time to actually get things done. But bottom line is, like, now you've got family members from Prescott's camp like tweeting, and you've got obviously Jerry Jones not really ever going to change his mentality, the way that he is and conducts himself. So my question to you as an expert in the NFL, in my eyes, somebody who's watching this forever, what do you think happens between a player like Prescott, who I know he's not as good as they say he is? Like, from an outside point of view, I understand that. But what do you think happens with the relationship here between a guy who has clearly been mistreated and doesn't feel valued?
Well, it's funny because they say mistreated and doesn't feel valued. And I mean, I think that Dak Prescott, given in any other situation, he's a failed quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he's that good. I think that he gets masked by the offensive line and the use of Zeke Elliott, because teams have to put a lot of energy on the one of the top 3 running backs in the entire league. And I think that all of this nonsense with money is just you're wanting something that you're not worth. I can name you at least 5 quarterbacks off the top of my head that are better than Dak Prescott right now, and he doesn't deserve their level of money. So I mean,
But
I think that
they were going to give it to him though in the end, correct?
no, I know they were going to give it
Okay,
to him.
okay.
So, like, I think that this whole nonsense of him not signing it is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think that Dak Prescott has missed out on a massive opportunity to be paid like a top 5 quarterback in the league, but he so clearly is not a top 5 quarterback in the league. And if Jerry Jones figures that out this year under the franchise tag, what happens to Dak Prescott? I think he still makes his money, but he definitely doesn't get protected and get to stay on the Dallas Cowboys. So, it's definitely going to be an interesting situation to see what the Cowboys do here, if indeed we do have an NFL season. But Dak Prescott definitely missed out on a large opportunity with the franchise tag deadline. So
That's the part I misunderstood, because I was under the impression, like, okay, if they're going to offer him this money, clearly there's an issue, like, relationship wise, like there's got to be some sort of a problem. Then you've got the brother coming out tweeting like he's not going to play for the Cowboys anymore, and you're going, okay, there's an underlying issue here. We know how Jerry Jones operates, and we know Dak Prescott isn't, like, you just outlined it better than I could say. Like, he's not nowhere near top 5 quarterback. But if for him to kind of receive an offer like that, like, where does the blame go around? Is it on Prescott, the agent? Like, it doesn't seem to really fall on Jerry Jones, even though he was prepared to still give him that money. It's just a convoluted, confusing situation, and I'm guessing that this means Dak Prescott ends up in another jersey eventually, probably sooner than most people thought. But do you see that this ever kind of being kind of brushed by the wayside, and all of a sudden we forget about this? Prescott is, working in tandem with Ezekiel Elliott, and we're fine. And
got to be holding the Lombardi Trophy. He's got to hold the Lombardi Trophy, or he's got to get close.
You saw the way they crumbled this season. They had a good start.
He didn't have Mike McCarthy, so that's going to be a big change. It'll be interesting to see if he can do anything with Dak. He did have a generational talent in Aaron Rodgers as his last quarterback, so it's a massive step down in talent level. But he's got to, in my opinion, in order for him to stay with the Dallas Cowboys, for one, it's going to have to be for a raise on this contract that he either turned down or whatever happened. A conspiracy theorist will say maybe Jerry Jones had second thoughts and just didn't submit the contract and willfully passed the deadline so that he could just have him for the 1 year on a prove it deal.
And put the blame all on Dak in the end.
Yeah, so no one's looking at Jerry and his camp.
Excuse me.
But yeah, in order for him to be in not another jersey, I think that they have to be at least playing for the Lombardi Trophy this year, if indeed there is a season for them to play. It's interesting. You've got some clubs coming out and they're releasing attendance limits. The Patriots 20%, and same with the Ravens 20%. They're planning on having fans in the stands, and they're planning on having a season. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of the NFL. But Dak Prescott, the era of Dak Prescott in Dallas might actually be coming to an end, but it could be a good thing, right? Because if they get a guy in there who doesn't have that level of ego, who can work a little bit better, maybe with Zeke Elliott, and they can smarten up and just drive the ball instead of trying to throw it. Drive the ball. You use your assets. You have the running back. You use him, overuse him, and then you throw the ball with the quarterback. I've just been so frustrated. I've been so frustrated with the Dallas Cowboys, and I mean, I watch their games and I play daily fantasy. I take Zeke Elliott, and then I think, man, this guy's the workhorse. This guy, they should be handing him the ball 3 snaps every time. And they don't. They use Dak, and Dak either overthrows the ball, underthrow. It's a strange situation in Dallas.
Weird. It is weird how much they go to the air when they've got Zeke Elliott on the field. Like, it's weird. They don't need. I think you're right. They don't need a quarterback as good. Somebody who just kind of fits in and gets half the job, if not a quarter of the job done.
Yeah, they need to feed the beast, right? They need to feed the guy that deserves to be making all the money on the team or all the money on the offense anyway, and that's Zeke Elliott. And if he can do what he's been touted to do, and he's getting into that part of his playing career now where he should be entering his prime. Right. He's got a few seasons under his belt, and you think as a generational talent coming into the league like that, he should be ready to go right away. But it does take some years. So if he can get it going and he can be that prolific running back, then Dallas could be challenging for the Lombardi Trophy, but like you said, man, they've got to be able to be consistent. 6-2, I believe, to start the season, and then they went 2 and
Yeah, it just fell apart.
it fell completely apart. The Black Cat came out. That was the Black Cat game. Was where it all turned around, man.
Cursed them, buddy. It cursed them. Yeah, because it was up until I think week 7 they were flying. I think you're right. Yeah, 6
against the New York Giants. They lost to the New York Giants and Daniel Jones, and that was it. That was the fat lady who was singing for the Dallas Cowboys.
It's been a long one, man. Any closing thoughts, especially on the NFL? I think we touched all of it. That could have been a 2-parter, honestly. But any closing thoughts?
Hey, you can make it a 2-parter if you want. It's up to you. You're doing the editing, right? So if you want to release it as boom and boom, then yeah.
I'll be honest, the editing's not too hard on these because we're doing it live, so we just we don't really focus on saying things multiple times.
But yeah, that's I mean, that's all the notes I've got. So yeah, it's great talking to you again, man. And
you, buddy.
We will when next we speak, hopefully we're talking about live hockey.
I dude, if it's not already happened, it'll be like tonight,
the night before or something. Yeah.
I'm excited for it. All right, you take care, man. We'll chat in the meantime.
It's like the night before Christmas, right? No, hockey fans won't be able to sleep.
Exactly. All right, buddy. Peace out.
All right, peace.
Chat in the meantime, eh? See ya.
Yeah, later. Bye.